Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to unpack India's POSH Act. Now, our goal here is super simple: to give you, whether you're an employee, a student, an employer, it doesn't matter, a really clear guide to your rights and responsibilities. Because when we all know the rules, we can all help build a safer, more respectful workplace.
You know, to really get the POSH Act, you have to understand that it didn't just appear out of thin air. It was born from a long, hard fight for dignity at work. It all started with the landmark for Shaka guidelines back in '97. Then, the tragic Nirbhaya case in 2012 created this massive public demand for something stronger, which finally led to this comprehensive law being passed in 2013.
So, to make this whole thing easy to follow, we've broken it down into 6 key parts. We'll start with the basic promise of the law. Then we'll define exactly what and who it covers. We'll introduce the special committee that handles complaints, walk through the actual justice process, look at the consequences for everyone involved, and wrap up by talking about how we can all create a better workplace culture.
So, what's the big idea behind this law? What's its core promise? Well, when you boil it all down, it's about one simple but powerful guarantee: that every single woman has a fundamental right to a professional environment that is completely free from sexual harassment. It's about ensuring safety and dignity.
Okay, so a promise is one thing, but for it to actually work, the law needs to have clear boundaries. Understanding these key definitions is absolutely crucial if you want to know your rights. So this next part is all about who is protected, where they're protected, and what exactly the law considers harassment.
And when we talk about who's protected, the Act's reach is incredibly wide. We're not just talking about full-time employees. This covers any woman in a professional setting. That means students, interns, even just visitors. And the workplace? That's not just the office anymore. It includes your work-from-home setup, virtual meetings, business trips, and even university hostels. Now this brings us to a really critical distinction. You know, workplace harassment, things like bullying or intimidation, that's a serious issue. But the POSH Act is laser-focused on one specific thing: preventing and dealing with unwelcome conduct that is sexual in nature.
And that definition of sexual harassment is intentionally very broad. It's not just about obvious physical actions. It includes verbal things, like inappropriate jokes. It includes nonverbal cues, like staring. It covers quid pro quo. You know, do this for me and you'll get that promotion. And super importantly in today's world, it absolutely includes digital harassment.
Take a comment like this. At first glance, you might think, what's the big deal? But imagine getting that as an unwelcome text message late at night. Suddenly, it can cross the line from a clumsy compliment into digital harassment. Under this law, context and consent, they are everything.
So what happens if something goes wrong? Who do you turn to? Well, the law says that any organization with 10 or more employees has to set up a special body. It's called the Internal Complaints Committee, or the ICC. Think of them as your first port of call.
Now, the way this committee is structured is really smart. It's designed for fairness and balance. It's always led by a senior woman from the company. It has 2 other employees. And, this is key, it includes 1 external member, usually from an NGO, to make sure things are impartial. On top of all that, the law says at least half of the ICC members have to be women.
Okay, so you've got this committee, but how does it all actually work? Just knowing the steps in the process can make it feel a lot less scary. The Act doesn't just create the ICC and leave it at that. It lays out a really clear, time-bound path for how every complaint has to be handled.
The first thing you absolutely have to know is the timeline. Generally, you need to file a written complaint within 3 months of the incident. But the ICC does have the power to extend that deadline by another 3 months if you have a good reason for the delay.
All right, so once the complaint is in, a very systematic process kicks off. There's an option to try and settle things through conciliation, but, and this is important, only if the person who complained requests it, and it can never involve a monetary payout. If that doesn't happen, a formal inquiry starts, where the ICC actually has powers like a civil court. It then submits its findings, and the employer is legally required to act on those findings within 60 days.
And the law demands that things move quickly. To make sure justice isn't delayed, the entire inquiry process, from the very beginning to the very end, has to be completed by the ICC within a strict 90-day window.
So, the inquiry is over, the findings are in. What happens next? Well, a strong law needs to have teeth, but it also needs to have safeguards. The POSH Act is built not just to hold people accountable, but also to protect the entire process from being abused.
So if a complaint is proven to be true after the inquiry, the consequences are serious.
They can be anything from a formal apology all the way to withholding a promotion, financial compensation for the victim, and even suspension or dismissal. And if the act was criminal, it can lead to formal police charges.
But to keep the system fair, the Act looks at the flip side too. What if someone files a complaint that's proven to be maliciously false? Well, if it's established that the complaint was filed just to cause harm, the person who filed it can also face disciplinary action.
And this right here is a vital, vital point that protects people who genuinely need help. Just because you can't find enough evidence to prove your claim, that does not mean you filed a malicious complaint. That protection is so important to make sure people aren't afraid to come forward.
You know, while the POSH Act is an absolutely essential legal tool, the real endgame isn't just about ticking boxes and being compliant. It's about building a workplace culture where harassment just doesn't happen to begin with, a culture that's truly built on mutual respect.
And to help with this, we're seeing modern tools emerge. Take the SheBox, for example. It's an online portal from the government of India. It gives women another way to file complaints directly, which is a huge help for those in remote areas or who might have issues with their internal committee. Ultimately, creating a truly safe workplace comes down to what we all do every single day. It's about maintaining professional boundaries, treating everyone with dignity, and just being sensitive in how we interact. And it's also about recognizing that while the POSH Act specifically protects women, organizations need safe channels for everyone, including men and LGBTQIA+ folks who can also face harassment.
So that really leaves us with one final big question. A law gives us the framework, a company policy gives us the rules, but is that enough? Building a workplace that's truly safe and respectful isn't just a legal duty, it's a shared responsibility that rests on every single one of us.